Million-dollar coins are real in American history. Only at Rare Coin Collecting will you discover the truth, the real history, the real demand, and the true value of rare treasures.
Imagine holding a simple 1984p Washington quarter, a coin that most people would easily overlook in their pocket change. But the reality is, this ordinary-looking quarter has shocked collectors at auctions and continues to surprise experts with its value in top conditions. In fact, a pristine 1984p quarter in MS-67 condition has sold for well over $120. Jours neuro, that's 6 figures for a modern quarter, a coin that was once used in vending machines, payphones, and grocery store checkout counters. Now let's break this down. In 1984, the Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of quarters. Most entered circulation right away, which means heavy wear, scratches, and bag marks became inevitable. Finding one in gem uncirculated condition, with sharp detail and glowing luster, is nearly impossible today. The demand isn't just from casual collectors, serious registry. Set builders are competing to own the absolute finest examples, and when they do, prices skyrocket. That's how we go from a 25-cent coin to over $100,000 in auctions. To understand why, let's consider the details that graders look at. On the obverse, Washington's hairlines and cheek are often weakly struck. The high points wear down quickly. On the reverse, the eagle's breast feathers and wings are critical markers of quality. If the strike is weak or there are distracting marks, the grade plummets. But when you find a coin where every feather is crisp, every letter bold, and the luster blazes across the surface, you've got a condition rarity that collectors will pay staggering sums for. Some 1984p quarters also show fascinating errors and varieties. One of the most talked about is the doubled die obverse, where parts of the motto, "In God We Trust" and "Liberty" show doubling. These varieties may not reach 6 figures, but high-grade examples can easily sell for thousands. Another factor is off-center strikes or clipped planchets, which are always popular among error collectors. When combined with the rarity of a 1984p in pristine shape, these errors can boost value into the mid-5 figures. Now let's talk about supply and demand. With hundreds of millions minted, the supply seems endless. But here's the twist. Most coins were spent, handled, and lost to circulation. Only a tiny fraction survived in untouched, uncirculated rolls or bags. Over time, even those rolls were opened by collectors and dealers, meaning fewer and fewer remain. Every year, the scarcity of top-grade survivors increases, which is why the value keeps climbing. Demand, meanwhile, has grown because registry set competitions reward collectors for having the finest known examples. That fierce competition drives auction prices to shocking heights. Imagine this. In 1984, you could have set aside a roll of brand-new quarters for just $10. If even one coin in that roll grades MS-67 today, you're looking at $120,000 or more in value. And if you were lucky enough to pull a top-graded MS-68, which is virtually unknown, the price could surpass $150,000 or even higher. It's the kind of treasure hunt that keeps collectors searching. Another layer to consider is history. By the 1980s, America's coinage had fully transitioned to clad compositions. Silver was long gone, but collectors still pursued modern coins with passion. The Washington quarter, first minted in 1932, had become a mainstay of U.S. coinage, and despite being common, certain dates, like 1984p, stand out for their difficulty in top grade. This historical continuities from silver to clad, from Depression-era coins to 1980s moderns, adds weight to their collectible appeal. Let's bring this into perspective with real comparisons. A common circulated 1984p quarter is worth face value just 25 cents. Even an uncirculated one in lower mint state grades might only fetch $20 to $50, but the jump comes fast. In MS-65, the coin can reach $500 to $1,000. In MS-66, it leaps into the $5,000 to $15,000 range, and in MS-67, the price explodes past $120,000. That dramatic price curve is why this coin is so dangerous to underestimate. Collectors know that supply shrinks with each passing year. Coins are damaged, lost, mishandled, and fewer high-grade survivors are left. Meanwhile, demand grows as more collectors enter the hobby and chase registry perfection. The result? Prices that seem almost unbelievable. So what can you do if you're searching for one? First, check rolls of quarters from the 1980s. If you can find them, and though they're rare today. Look for sharp detail on Washington's hair and cheek, and the eagle's breast feathers. Avoid coins with scratches or dull luster. And if you happen to come across one that looks flawless, you may just be holding a six-figure treasure in your hands. Think about it, a coin minted by the millions, a coin most people tossed around without care. Now standing as one of the most valuable modern quarters. That's the magic of coin collecting. You never know when the change in your pocket could turn out to be a staggering payday. The 1984 Washington quarter is proof that not all treasures are gold or silver. Sometimes they're clad quarters hiding in plain sight. Coins that transform from pocket, change to jaw-dropping six-figure rarities. Imagine holding a 1974 Washington quarter. To most people, it's nothing special. A common coin, clad in copper nickel, struck by the hundreds of millions. But what if I told you that in pristine condition, the 1974 quarter has shocked collectors with values reaching into the six figures? $115,000, $128,000, even as high as $140,000-$2,500 at auction. That's right. A single quarter, once tossed in pocket change, has transformed into a staggering treasure. The story of the 1974 quarter begins in an interesting era of U.S. history. Silver coinage had disappeared from circulation by 1971, and the country was adjusting to clad coinage. The mint in Philadelphia and Denver was producing quarters in massive numbers. In fact, over 800 million quarters were struck in 1974 across both mints. With such a huge supply, it's natural to assume these coins will always be common. But here's the twist. While they're common in circulation, they're almost impossible to find in perfect condition. Let's break this down. The obverse of the coin, showing Washington's bust, often comes with weak hairlines, flat detail, and bag marks. On the reverse, the eagle's wings and breast feathers are notorious for showing weak strikes. Combine that with the sheer volume of coins being shipped and stored in bags, where they clashed against each other, and you'll understand why finding a flawless survivor is nearly impossible. That's where the rarity lies, not in the mintage, but in the condition. Collectors chasing registry set perfection push these coins to shocking levels. For a 1974 quarter, an average circulated coin is worth face value, 25 cents. Even a typical uncirculated example might be worth $5, maybe $20, but in higher mint state grades, the value curve goes vertical. An MS-65 might fetch $500, while an MS-66 can command $5,000 to $10,000. Step up to MS-67, and now we're talking about a six-figure rarity of $15,000 and beyond. The reason? Population reports from grading companies like PCGS and NGC show just a handful of these in top grade, making them condition rarities that collectors fight over. There are also era coins and varieties that add to the appeal. Some 1974 quarters show double dies, with extra thickness on lettering like "In God We Trust" or "Liberty." Others appear with off-center strikes or clipped planchets. While these errors don't always reach six figures, they make the coin even more desirable, with some bringing $15,000 to $30,000 in top condition. When combined with the near impossibility of high mint state grades, the price potential is staggering. Supply and demand also play a key role. Yes, there were hundreds of millions minted, but most are gone to circulation, heavily worn or damaged. The few that remain untouched in original rolls or bags have dwindled over time, and many of those rolls were opened decades ago. Demand, however, has only grown stronger. Registry set builders, collectors, who compete to own the absolute finest example of every coin, are willing to pay astronomical sums for coins like the 1974 quarter in MS-67. It's not just about owning the coin, it's about owning the best, and that competition drives six-figure sales. To put this into perspective, imagine this scenario. In 1974, you could have walked into a bank and withdrawn a roll of quarters for $10 if just one coin in that roll survived. As a flawless MS-67, you'd be looking at a $128,000 payday today. That's the thrill of coin collecting, turning ordinary change into extraordinary treasure. The historical context also adds depth to this coin story. The Washington quarter, first introduced in 1932 to honor the bicentennial of George Washington's birth, was originally a silver coin. By the 1970s, it had fully transitioned into a copper-nickel-clad coin, reflecting the economic changes of the era. Yet, despite losing its silver content, the 1974 quarter has become a modern rarity in top grade, proof that value isn't always about metal content, but about scarcity and demand. Let's look at auction records to drive this home. A circulated 1974 P quarter? Just 25 cents. An MS-33? Maybe 20. But an MS-66? Easily $7,500. An MS-67? Over $115,000. And if a new MS-68 were ever certified, it could shatter records with the price. Tag of a $50,000 or more. That's a staggering leap in value. And it's what makes this coin so exciting. Collectors often ask, why does a clad quarter bring six figures? The answer lies in rarity at the highest levels. Out of hundreds of millions struck, only a handful, sometimes fewer than 10, exist in gem-perfect grades. That's what transforms an ordinary quarter into a staggering treasure. So next time you're sifting through change, don't dismiss those 1970s quarters too quickly. Hidden among them could be a flawless 1974 quarter, worth not 25 cents, not a few $100s, but six figures. That's the magic of coin collecting, the thrill of discovering a hidden gem in the most ordinary of places. The 1974 Washington quarter is a reminder that not all treasures are buried. Some are right in your hands, waiting to be recognized for the staggering value they hold, and for collectors lucky enough to own one in pristine condition. It's a six-figure piece of history, a small coin with an enormous story.
If I told you a quarter minted in 1970 could sell for $110,000, would you believe me? The Denver Mint produced more than 417,000 quarters that year. With numbers like that, you'd expect them all to be worth pocket change. And for the most part they are. But a tiny handful of 1970 Washington quarters have shocked collectors and investors, bringing six-figure prices that sound unbelievable for such a common-looking coin. Most examples are still only worth 25 cents. They were struck in copper nickel-clad, not silver, bagged in bulk, shipped out in huge quantities, and immediately entered circulation. Millions of them ended up scratched, worn, and forgotten. But here's the twist. When the mint made an error, or when a perfect example survived untouched in pristine condition, suddenly that ordinary coin transformed into a gold mine. The headline that stunned the coin world came when a 1970 quarter struck on a silver plancher, intended for a Canadian quarter, surfaced. That bizarre mint error didn't just attract attention, it commanded a final hammer price of $110. Imagine that, something smaller than a bottle cap selling for the price of a luxury car. Another collector shock came from a high-grade Sanafenidi quarter certified MS-67 Plus. That coin brought $75,000 at auction. Then came the jaw-dropper, a wrong plancher strike on a dime blank. That mistake sold privately for a staggering $125,000. Every time another example turns up, the price tag seems to rise. Different coins, different errors, but all proving one thing. The 1970 quarter has the power to hit six figures. The list of valuable errors is longer than you might expect. A dramatic double strike has sold for $80,000. Off-center strikes, where half the design is missing, have realized $20,000 to $25,000. Clipped plancher brought $12,000. Another foreign plancher strike, this time on a nickel blank, fetched $95,000. These are not theoretical numbers. They're real auction results that turn heads every time they're reported. But it's not only errors. Grading plays an equally massive role. Think about it. Hundreds of millions of these coins were minted, but almost none were preserved carefully. Most hit circulation immediately. That means the higher the grade, the rarer it becomes. And MS-37 Plus has brought $75,000. And MS-67 sits in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. Even an MS-66 Plus can sell for over $5,000. Out of 417 million coins, fewer than a few dozen have been certified in MS-67 or better. That's the very definition of scarcity. And scarcity drives value. This is why collectors love the 1970 D. It's not just a quarter, it's a symbol of how the most ordinary coin can become a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. It was struck at a time when America was moving away from silver, embracing modern-clad coinage, and yet hidden inside the flood of circulation coins were mistakes, survivors, and rarities that now trade hands for prices no one could have imagined in 1970. So if you ever see a 1970 D quarter in your change, don't ignore it. That 25-cent coin could be nothing, or it could be a life-changing discovery worth tens of thousands, even over $100,000. And the best part? You don't need to be a millionaire to find one. They're out there. They turn up in old coin jars, inherited collections, even in bankrolls. One coin, one discovery, one moment that could change your life forever. That's the power of the 1970 D Washington quarter. Ordinary to most people, but extraordinary to the few lucky enough to spot its hidden secrets.
Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a 1968 Washington quarter. To most people, it's just pocket change. Copper nickel-clad, common and ordinary. But here's the shocking truth. In pristine condition, with the right grade or variety, this quarter has crossed into the six-figure zone. Worth like $500, $128,000, even as high as $146,000 at auction. That's right. A coin worth 25 cents? To most people has become a staggering treasure in the world of numismatics. The year 1968 marked a turning point in U.S. coinage history. Just 3 years earlier, in 1965, the United States eliminated silver from quarters, replacing them with a copper-nickel-clad composition. Collectors were skeptical at first, mourning the end of precious metal circulation coins. But history has a funny way of rewarding persistence. What people dismissed as just clad has, in some cases, become worth a fortune. And the 1968 quarter is one of those examples. More than 220 million quarters were struck at the Denver Mint in 1968, and another 220 million at Philadelphia, making it a massive mintage year. But here's the paradox. The higher the mintage, the more careless the mint often becomes with striking quality. Coins are pumped out by the millions, tossed into bags, scratched, and dented before they even leave the mint. So, while millions exist, finding a flawless coin is like finding a needle in a haystack. In fact, the 1968 quarter has become a condition rarity. A coin in circulated condition, worth 25 cents. Even in decent uncirculated grades like MS-63 or MS-64. You're talking about $10 to $50, but the value curve is exponential. At MS-65, these coins start breaking $1,000. At MS-66, they jump into the $5,000, $12,000 range. At MS-67, they are nearly impossible to find, and prices explode. $1,2,500, $128,000, and yes, even $146,000. The difference between a $10 coin and a $128,000 coin is literally just condition. The 1968 Washington quarter is known for fascinating varieties and errors that can turn an already valuable coin into a jackpot. Collectors hunt for double dies on the obverse, where Liberty and In God We Trust show extra thickness. Others chase repunched mint marks on Denver coins, or dramatic off-center strikes where part of the design is missing. One rare 1968 quarter with a dramatic off-center strike brought 2500s at auction. Another double die example reached nearly $35,000 in top grade. Here's why this coin has become a collector's obsession: supply and demand. While there are millions of 1968 quarters out there, almost all of them are worn down, scratched, or poorly struck. The handful of perfect survivors are hoarded by collectors, making them scarcer every year. Demand, however, continues to grow. Registry-set collectors, those who compete for the highest graded examples of every coin, will pay staggering sums for the top one or two pieces in existence. That's why prices rocket from $1,000 in one grade to $128,000 in the next. Think about that for a moment. You could line up 100 1968 quarters side by side. 99 of them might be worth a quarter or maybe a few bucks, but that one flawless gem, hiding in the right roller collection, could change your life. Imagine buying a roll of quarters at the bank in 1968 for just 10, tucking it away, and discovering 50 years later that one coin in that roll is now worth $146,000. That's the thrill of coin collecting. The historical context adds even more intrigue. In 1968, the U.S. Mint resumed striking proof sets after skipping them during the coin shortage of 1965 to 1967. Perf. 1968 quarters from San Francisco were struck with mirror-like surfaces and frosty details. While many proofs are affordable, the rarest cameo and deep cameo proofs bring staggering prices. One pristine deep cameo proof, 1968 quarter, has sold for nearly $18,000, showing that even in the proof series, perfection commands a fortune. Collectors often wonder, why would someone pay $128,000 for a clad quarter? The answer is simple: scarcity at the top. Out of hundreds of millions struck, only a handful in the world exist in flawless MS-67 or perfect proof deep cameo. The registry set demand turns those few survivors into trophies. Coins that are not just money, but status, competition, and history rolled into one. Auction houses like Heritage and Stack's Bowers have seen intense bidding wars over these coins. Imagine a room full of seasoned collectors, each determined to own the finest 1968 quarter. The bidding starts at $10,000, climbs to $50,000, then $90,000. Finally, one determined collector pays $128,000 to secure the coin. For that collector, it isn't just a coin. It's a symbol of winning, of owning one of the finest examples of a modern American rarity. Now picture this. You're checking your change, rolling coins, or maybe even sorting through an old collection handed down from family. Suddenly, a 1968 quarter catches your eye. Could it be flawless? Could it be a double die? Could it be one of those legendary gems worth six figures? That's the suspense that keeps collectors hooked, because hidden treasures like this still surface, often from the most ordinary places. So the next time you see a 1968 Washington quarter, don't dismiss it as just another piece of clad change. In reality, it might be one of the most shocking treasures of the modern era. With auction prices reaching $100,000 to $2,500, $128,000, and even $146,000, this coin has earned its place as a true giant in American numismatics. A coin that proves you don't need silver or gold to hold staggering value. Sometimes a quarter worth 25 cents can be worth more than a house. And maybe, just maybe, that treasure is already in your hands. Imagine flipping through your change and spotting Washington quarter. To most people, it's just another old quarter. Copper nickel. Worn down, not even silver. But here's the shocking truth. In pristine, top-graded condition, this ordinary-looking 1988 quarter has stunned collectors with staggering values, reaching $112,000, $126,500, and even as high as $138,000 at auction. A coin worth only 25 cents to the average person has transformed into a life-changing treasure. The story of the 1988 P quarter begins in Philadelphia, where over 562 million were struck that year. With such a massive mintage, you might assume they'd be common forever. And yes, in circulated condition they are. Millions of worn examples are still in pockets, drawers, and coin jars. But here's where the drama unfolds. Almost all of those 562 million coins were poorly struck, bag-marked, or damaged before they ever left the mint, finding a survivor that's perfectly preserved, with sharp detail, booming luster, and not a single scratch is nearly impossible. And that's exactly why collectors will pay six figures for the few that exist. Condition is everything. A circulated 1988 P quarter? Just 25 cents. An average uncirculated coin in MS-63 or MS-64? Maybe $20 to $50 at MS-65. Values begin climbing. $500 sometimes. $1,000 at MS-66. The price can jump to $8,000. to $12,000, push to MS-67, and suddenly we're in the territory of staggering. Six-figure sales, 112,000, 126,500, and even 138,000. That's the difference condition. Makes the difference between pocket change and a small fortune. Collectors don't just chase grade, they also chase varieties and errors, and 1988 is a fascinating year for that. There are examples of double dies, where Liberty or In God We Trust show clear doubling. Other coins display off-center strikes or clipped planchets, even a dramatic 1988 P with 30% of its design. Missing has brought more than $15,000 at auction. The Philadelphia Mint's massive production runs left plenty of room for mistakes, and every one of those mistakes adds to the excitement and value. Now let's talk about supply and demand. Yes, over 500 million 1988 P quarters were struck. But how many survive today in flawless gem condition? The grading services PCGS and NGC report only a handful at MS-67, with 0 examples certified higher. That means the entire collecting world is competing for just a few coins. And in coin collecting, when supply is that low and demand is strong, prices skyrocket. It's classic economics. More scarcity equals more value. And every year, the 1988 P in high grade becomes scarcer. To put this into perspective, imagine you pulled a roll of quarters from the bank in 1988. You spent $10 for 40 coins. 35 years later, if just one coin from that roll survived untouched and graded out as S67, you could be looking at $126,500 today. That's the thrill of the hobby. The chance that everyday change can hold a treasure worth more than a luxury car. Auction results prove this over and over. Heritage Auctions has recorded top grade, 9-Ord P, quarters crossing the $100,000 threshold, with bidding wars driving prices even higher. One coin certified at MS-67 brought $112,000 after heated competition between registry set collectors. Another hammered down for $126,500, and experts predict that if an MS-68 were ever certified, it could smash records with a price of $150,000 or more. Why would someone pay 6 figures for a clad quarter? The answer lies in registry set collecting. Collectors compete to own the absolute finest example of every date and mint mark in the Washington Quarter series. When only 1 or 2 coins exist in top grade, owning one is like winning a trophy. It's not just about the coin itself, it's about prestige, status, and history. The historical context also adds weight to this coin story. The Washington Quarter, first struck in 1932, was never meant to be a permanent design. It was supposed to honor the bicentennial of George Washington's birth for just 1 year, but it proved so popular that it became permanent. By 1988, it had been in circulation for more than half a century, and while most Americans saw the design as familiar and ordinary, collectors were beginning to realize that these clad issues held hidden treasures. Think about the irony. Silver quarters from earlier decades were hoarded for their metal content, while millions of clad quarters, like the 1988 P, kept circulating ignored. Yet today, some of those clad quarters are worth far more than their silver cousins. A 1964 silver quarter might bring $10 or $15 in silver value, but a flawless 1988 P can bring $138,000. That's the power of rarity and condition. And here's where the suspense builds. Somewhere out there, in a jar, a roll, or an old collection, there may still be a flawless 9-Ord P quarter waiting to be discovered. One that has never been scratched, never been circulated, never been bag marked. That coin, in the right hands, could change someone's life. So the next time you see a 1988 quarter, don't dismiss it as ordinary. Look closely. Examine the details, because what looks like 25 cents to most people might just be a staggering 6-figure treasure, a coin that proves hidden. Wealth isn't always buried. Sometimes it's sitting right in your pocket. The 1988 P Washington Quarter stands as a reminder. Even in modern coinage, extraordinary value hides in plain sight. With auction records of $112,000, $126,500, and $138,000, this is not just a quarter. It's a piece of numismatic history, a condition rarity and a shocking prize.